Welcome everybody. This is our third month of our Downsizers Club, our third meeting of the club, if you will. And the topic, as Kathleen mentioned, is what is your stuff worth? And we were talking earlier about that familiar experience of having to come in and deal with your parents' estate many times unexpectedly. And so adding all of that stress onto whatever circumstance that is that causes you to have to deal with it, you're dealing with a lot of their stuff that you may know something about and oftentimes don't know anything about. So we're trying to avoid that situation as we get older and when it comes time to face that sort of downsizing moment, if you will. And so we've talked about how to dispose of our paper. That was the first month. What documents need to be saved, what needs to be shredded, what can be recycled, those kinds of things. And then last month, of course, we did our electronics. And it sounds like many of us got rid of a whole trainload, in my case, of old electronics in the city, took them off our hands. So that was progress. And I hope everybody took advantage of that if you wanted to. This month, we're talking about the value of our stuff. And so when it comes time to dispose of these things that maybe your kids don't want, or maybe you, like in my case, you've inherited some things from your parents and you really don't know what anything's worth. So we're going to try to help with that and then talk later on about estate sales and how best to really kind of sell the lot, if you will, when you're ready to do that. So I'm going to introduce our first guest who will start out the program. And he is Justin Rogers. And he's the owner and senior appraiser of Rogers Fine Art. After traveling in Cleveland, Ohio and graduating from John Carroll University, he founded Rogers Fine Art in 2007. He regularly catalogs, researches, and values fine art and personal property for museums, cultural and religious organizations, noteworthy private collections, and high-value estates. He's an accredited member of the International Society of Appraisers and is compliant with the uniform standards of professional appraisal practice. His articles have been published in the Journal of Advanced Appraisal Studies and the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Journal. And I'd love to welcome Justin Rogers to our Downsizers Club. Justin, take it away if you would.
Great. Thank you very much, Kathy, Kathleen, everybody. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you here today. Thank you for watching me chat at my screen. So let me just give you a brief overview of what I do, why you might need an appraiser, and what the process looks like. As you heard, I got my experience in Cleveland working for a personal property appraisal firm, which specialized in fine art, but also covered a number of antiques, collectibles, things of that nature. When people ask me what I do, they always say, oh, I've never met an art appraiser before. Tell me about it. Basically, the quickest way to say this is I help people solve art problems, and actually problems that deal more with areas outside of that as well. So sometimes it's collectibles, sometimes it's furniture, sometimes it's antiques, sometimes it's books. The other question I get from people a lot of times, oh, it's like Antiques Roadshow. There is a little bit of an element to that. Although that's not exactly how it works. When you see Antiques Roadshow, you get the abbreviated version of what the process really is. I thank you for coming to me because this is a subject that I am really interested in and had a lot of experience in. Actually, quite soon after I entered the appraisal industry, 3 out of my 4 grandparents died within a few years, and we were left dealing with a couple of different houses in different states, and one sort of bordered on being a hoarder. And so there was a whole to do around how everything worked out, especially when it started, that, you know, there were more than one interested entities. So, you know, I, as somebody who's gone through the process, you know, I really thank you all for thinking about this and making the preparations to move forward. So the quick question that I would throw out, you know, why do you need an appraiser? It boils down to a couple of different, very specific functions a lot of time. If you were engaging me, actually, let me take a step back for a second. I work in two capacities. I work as an appraiser, and I also work as a consultant. There's kind of a fine line between those two roles, but I want to make clear that there are those two capacities because the end result is a little bit different. If you're engaging me for an appraisal, you usually have a specific purpose in mind. There are 5 that I see most often, although there are a ton of others. There are insurance, pre and post loss. There's litigation, lawsuits, donations and tax issues. If you're donating something to a museum or other charitable organization and need to know the value, a lot of times for IRS tax deduction purposes. And then getting to the 2 that are the overwhelming, the most often that I see are estate planning or equitable division in some way. I'll throw divorce in there some way as well, but a lot of times it is heirs or different interested parties trying to figure out what their stake is. And then the last one, purchase or sale decisions. That kind of butts up to the consulting issue as well. Now, the consulting part of it, you may have a specific end in mind, but it may not be, you may not need a document that says, you know, this painting is worth this amount, right? Usually if you need that kind of document, it's a little bit more involved. It takes time to prepare the report. A lot of times what people are wanting is, you know, do I have anything valuable? Is this even worth doing? What do I need to do with that? And I'm always happy to do that. That tends to fall on the consulting side. So there are a few different ways that we kind of chop this up and assign tasks as appraisers. But generally, one of my tests for am I consulting or am I appraising is what kind of document I'm giving you at the end. Am I giving you an official valuation or not? It is also important to point out that each of those different purposes may have a different value involved. There are a lot of terms that we throw out that have very specific meanings. There's market value, there's fair market value, there's replacement value, actual cash value. I'm not going to get into the weeds on that, but just so you know, an appraiser is going to ask you those things. They're going to want to know what if you need a document, what you're going to need that for, and that will help them figure out which value you're going for. Just a quick note on the process. COVID has put all of us into a weird place, obviously. The appraisal organizations have really tried to be forward thinking about how we approach these issues, how we handle issues. What I can say is if you are going to meet with an appraiser, expect us to be wearing masks. We're going to keep our distance. We are probably going to have hand sanitizer. We're going to be taking those precautions. They've asked all of us to do it, you know, whether or not, you know, whatever our personal feelings are on that, as professionals, we are asked to really go to the utmost to protect the health of our clients. And I think that's good policy. So just so you know, that if you are meeting with an appraiser in person, that is one thing you can expect. One of the other things that has come out of this is a loosening of expectations as far as, do we need to meet in person? Can I gather enough information from photos that you send me, from information that you give to me, from a Zoom video that we have? And that's going to vary on a case-by-case basis, right? Sometimes I can take a look at photos and say, oh, this is roughly the price range. There are other times where it's just too difficult to try to do via photo. You need to be in touch with the object. But I will say I've done a number of different appraisals that needed to be done for insurance purposes. And the clients weren't thrilled about meeting in person. And I prepared my report saying, I didn't view this in person. I did view this by photograph. Any final valuation, I reserve the right to change my mind if I view this object in the future. And hopefully when this is over, I will get a chance to view those things. And that was fine. The insurance company was quite fine with that. On the other end of the spectrum, we're not sure if the IRS is going to allow that yet for charitable donations. It would be nice if they came out with something before the end of the year, because that's going to be the deadline for a lot of charitable donations to museums, those kinds of things. We don't have any official word on that yet. So at least just from what I've heard. So, some of these things are going to be, some of these things are just going to have to depend on what types of things you have. Generally, during an inspection, I will look at a piece. If it's a painting, I'll take it off the wall. If it's a book, I'll open it up and check condition. If it's furniture or antiques, I'm going to give it a good search. Going to take photos, take notes, take measurements, whatever I can do to help document what I've viewed. And then I will take all that back and go to my office, start doing my research, and then prepare a report. That is for an appraisal. For a consulting job, it's a little bit looser than that. I still like to document everything, still like to take photos, but it may be a little bit more informal in nature, depending on what kind of parameters we set up around the visit. The amount of time it takes depends on how many items there are, what the end is, how long it takes to prepare a report, anything like that. That is how the process works. There are a couple of things that, to go back to the Antiques Roadshow mention that I'd made earlier, everything seems so off the cuff, and you've got your expert standing there talking about, oh, well, this piece was done by this artist, and they'll tell a story about the artist, and the person who brings it in tells a personal story. It doesn't always work like that, right? What you don't see behind the scenes, first of all the things that weren't very valuable. That, they went through thousands of items to get through the 5 or 10 that they've got on the show that day. But you also don't see the research involved. A lot of times what's going to be happening before, as they prepare to go live, or as they prepare to go on camera, there's going to be some research involved. A lot of times they may call another expert to say, hey, does this look right? What have you sold? What have you seen? So, you know, I may not be able to give all of the information that you need there on site, but, you know, I'm certainly happy to talk about the elements that I am comfortable with. Now, related to that, or what kinds of things do I kind of need or expect from you? Family history is always interesting. Documentation is better. A lot of times people will have a long family story about a certain item, but no real solid documentation. That's okay. Not always necessary, but it makes the process longer and sometimes more complicated. Things that are helpful: inventories from the past appraisals, if you've gone through any of those. Documentation as far as receipts, any of those things are certainly helpful. Letters from experts, if you've talked to other experts in the past. Authentication, you know, any sort of notes you have, or you know, from the artist, him or herself, but also from, you know, maybe an expert who authenticated the work at one point in time. And just a brief note on that: authentication is a bit of a thorny issue a lot of times. It depends on the object, depends on the item. Sometimes you can sort of make the call right there if things look right. The higher the value, the more questionable the background, the provenance. It may take a little while to actually authenticate something. In a project recently, I had some clients approach me with portrait paintings from the 19th century that, you know, the family said was by this famous artist, and, you know, was, you know, the letter was very chummy about knowing the artist. Well, the letter was from 1950, so obviously that's 100 years after the painting was actually made. And when we started talking to the experts who specialize in that, they said, well, you know, they're not bad paintings, but that's not the artist. And so, you know, those issues happen. Some of the times the documentation's good, sometimes it's not. It's just one part of a lot of different things that we look at. You know, I think at this point, those are kind of all my introductory notes. Kathy, if you've got questions that you'd like to ask, or if there are questions that other people have, I'd be happy to talk about.
Yes, and to repeat, if you have any questions for Justin or Gretchen, who's our next presenter, go ahead and just type them up in the chat. And then if there's time at the end, we can take them live. You know, we can go back into gallery view. So feel free to type your questions into the chat. I want to know what it costs, Justin, when you, because, you know, I'm thinking, if it's like Antiques Roadshow, in that, you know, a small percentage of people actually have something valuable. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What does it cost? What is your fee, and what does it cost to get that appraisal done?
Sure.
And does that factor into how selective people are with the things they bring you? Sure.
And I'm sorry to be slippery on this, but there are a couple different rates. And basically, if I'm getting dragged into litigation, the rates go way up. If you're asking me to be an expert witness, that's priced accordingly. Now, most of the time, appraisers will charge in the range around here. This is a regional kind of thing, but we'll generally charge in the region of $150 to $200 an hour. But it kind of depends on what you need to get done. I always like to really discuss with clients what they have and what they need before we even get started. And I like to provide an estimate before we're even on the clock, so that everybody knows what's going around, what has to happen, and generally what the prices are going to be. If we're doing a consulting job, or just a quick walkthrough of, say you have a bunch of different items, and we, you just want to know, is there anything here worth pursuing more? I'm always happy to do those kinds of things, and agree to usually a rate and a time beforehand. And the other part of this is, I'm not here to stand in between you and knowledge. If you have one item and you just don't know if it's worth, should I have this appraised? Should I not have this appraised? I'm always happy to take, especially if you can send me a photo, give me some information. I'm always happy to take a look and tell you whether it's going to be worth your time and your money to do so. And usually to do so at no charge. I don't always have the right answers or the complete answers right away, but I'm always happy to take a look at something and talk to you about, where it's generally going to fall in the value range, and whether or not it's worth your time to dig into a little bit more deeply. As I said, I try to help people solve all art problems, and then, secondary to that is we try to find a way to make it work price-wise for everybody involved. So,
okay.
So it doesn't necessarily have to be expensive all the time. We can find ways to focus and limit tasks so that you get what you need without running up a huge bill.
Okay. Well, let's do this. Let's switch over to our other presenter, and people can think about questions that they may have for you. These are these items, that and I can think of, well, just 2 or 3 that I got from my parents, took before the estate sale, and I've always sort of wondered about them, but there may come a time when I want to get that appraised, and that's why I always ask the cost question, because I'm sure people are disappointed sometimes when just like the rejects from Antiques Roadshow, where you've done the appraisal and then it's not worth much at all, sort of scenario.
Yeah, and a lot of times, again, let me be absolutely clear. I'm not trying to put anybody in that situation where they're going to be disappointed and have a bill that we're sending to them, right? I'm trying to avoid that for sure, because nobody comes out happy in that situation.
Right. Okay. Thanks. Well, so we'll save up some questions for you. We're going to move on to Gretchen Wilson. Gretchen is a lifelong estate sale shopper, collector, and observer of objects available on the secondary market. She's a former software analyst in the healthcare industry, but now is finally happy in her new career and proud to be the owner of Dazzle Estate Sales. It's a growing estate liquidation service serving Lawrence and the surrounding communities. And Gretchen, you and I had a conversation on the phone that lasted a long time when I contacted you, and I'm afraid the takeaway is going to be, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, was that some of our stuff just isn't as valuable as it used to be. And I don't want to lead off with the bummer, but there's some things that were used to sell great, and as the boomers have come to reach our senior years, there's a surplus of stuff out there, right?
There's a huge surplus of stuff out there, particularly china, glassware, Hummels. If you have a Hummel collection and love it, hang on to it.
Yeah. I mean, I think you see that a lot, and I'll let you sort of walk through the process with, and this is a lot of stuff. This is a whole house a lot of times, right? And it's your job to walk through and you don't know what you're going to get. And you walk in and you've got to do some evaluating sort of on the fly. I mean, just assessing. What does that look like these days in the time of COVID and distancing and all that? How is that working for you?
It's still working the same. We're trying to practice social distancing at the estate sales. Everybody's required to wear a mask. We sanitize high touch areas, throughout the sale, doorknobs, counters. But it hasn't really affected sales at all, to be honest with you. I think people are a little hungry to get back out, so they're buying big.
Yeah. So what are people's expectations when they call you and you come into a house and maybe it's a big 3-story house like my in-laws had and it's full of stuff, and what are their expectations about just the overall value of their things? Are they a little too optimistic in most cases, or will they take what they can get, sort of?
I would say kind of the opposite. It depends. I guess it depends on the situation. A lot of times if it's the children approaching me and their parents or loved ones have passed on or moved to assisted living, a lot of times they just think it's all junk and they just want to, can you do anything? Is this even possible? And a lot of times it is, because even though it isn't valuable to them, it is still valuable to people, that shop our estate sales. They want the linens, they want the towels, they want the household products, the dishes, everyday dishes, not china and glassware, but they really want bargains. So furniture is down unless it's mid-century. Modern furniture selling really well. Antique furniture is not. If it's Victorian or Eastlake, or Mission even. Mission used to sell really well. Mission's not really selling anymore. People have to set their expectations a little bit differently on furniture if it's antique. Unless it's mid-century, then we can sell it.
Yeah, that does seem to be hot, and it's been hot for 10, 15 years, hasn't it?
It hasn't gone away, and it's not going away.
Yeah. So what else? Let's talk, vintage. And I was reminded by another estate sale coordinator that vintage to our kids means toys from the 90s or even the early 2000s.
Yeah, like
and
Little Pony. Remember Little Pony? People
are
collecting that.
So those are the categories that are hot, that the younger people just starting out in their homes are wanting. Is that true?
Legos are big. Don't throw away your Legos, your kids' Legos. They still sell. It's, even though things, the older toys sell, the Star Wars and that vintage stuff, but you're getting into a market of like, My Little Pony and Care Bears and that kind of stuff is actually collectible.
So when you go into a house with an abundance of china, good china, formal, informal, maybe there's depression glass, maybe there's, the cranberry glass that I have a million pieces of, and you're shaking your head now. It's just no way, Jose.
I have to set the expectations that that's not where they're going to make their money. They're going to make their money on the bulk of the household items. It's not going to bring any sort of big payment, to say.
And if you see an object or a piece of art that you think might be really valuable, how do you go about appraising that? So you've got a house that's pretty much just not junk, but it's just run-of-the-mill stuff, but then you see something on the wall and your red flag goes up. How do you how do
Right.
you?
And I'll refer to experts like Justin, or, you know, somebody, if it's a different area of expertise, I'll call on another expert. And oftentimes there's not a charge for that through that consultant, because they might have a buyer for that item. So they're willing to talk with me, you know, about maybe liquidating that through them. And that could be better for the family if we pre-sale that item to a collector.
And I did want to mention too that we will, next month, we will be narrowing our focus a little bit more to precious metals. So we're going to have our coin scholar, Dean Schmidt, with the Kansas Coin Collection. We'll have someone here on talking gems and fine jewelry, and we'll deal very specifically with that. But let's talk costume jewelry. And because a lot of people, in fact, when I was going to estate sales and garage, there would be a ton of jewelry. And I'm just wondering if any of that is hot right now, or trending, or retro.
Jewelry always sells. It just, I think it hasn't gone away. It's not selling like it used to, you know, a Trifari piece, you know, I used to be able to put a nice price on it. It's come down a little bit, but Eisenberg still sells, Miriam Haskell still sells. You know, if you market what you have, like we try to do, and garner that audience who's going to buy those items, they will sell.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything I missed that might be, you know, hot sellers or worth more than, rather than less than they used to?
Gold and silver right now is, you know, if I do a sale with gold or sterling, it always sells. It's gonna go the first day, because people are speculating on gold and silver right now. Okay. Old toys always sell. Good old books always sell. Pottery is always popular. Studio art pottery, whether it be from current or past. Artwork, okay. You know, Justin will tell you artwork sells.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we do have some questions now. I've been sort of letting them build up. Jean says, I would like to donate my aunt's Noritake china to a low-income family, but it's probably not dishwasher and microwave safe. What's the best thing to do?
Oh, is that for me? I
guess so, yeah.
The Noritake, if it has gold trim, you probably can't use it in the microwave. They would have to hand wash it. I mean, it would be a beautiful gift to donate.
But they just have to hand wash it.
They'd have to hand wash it. I mean, you can put it in the dishwasher. It's going to lose its details, though, as they do that every day, if they use it for everyday affairs.
Okay. Justin, I think this one's probably for you. It's from Angie, and she says, my late husband collected antique and/or reproduction armor, helmets, swords, halberds, I don't know what that is, chest and back plates, gauntlets, etc. I would like to find good homes for these and also get some money for them. What is the best approach with a specialized collection like this?
Well, that's a great question, because to my knowledge, there's not anybody really in the Kansas City area or the Kansas, Missouri area, because that's kind of part of the area that I cover. So it would, it kind of starts with, getting an idea of what the items are. And, a lot of times what I will do is just check with my colleagues. A lot of times they're in New York or Chicago, a lot of times. And a lot of times I just end up being a conduit to set people in place with people who specialize in that. It's always good to start with an inventory. if you have it. If you have photos in that inventory, it's even better, depending on what your skills are with all of that. You know, that's a great place to start, because if you have all the information in one place, it makes it a lot easier to start talking to dealers, to auction houses, and anybody who's going to be involved. But you're right, that is specialized. And off the top of my head, I'd have to take a look at the time periods, and the styles, in order to put you in contact with somebody who's more specialized in that market.
Yeah, and I also did want to mention, and correct me if I'm wrong, Justin, the art galleries used to do appraisals. I mean, years ago, in fact, I have a painting that I got from my parents, and it has paperwork from the Nelson Art Museum in Kansas City from, I think, the 70s. And they had it appraised at that time. I think they also had it repaired or restored. But the museums are not providing that service anymore, are they?
Generally, no.
Okay.
The museum organizations that oversee all the museums consider that to be a conflict of interest in a lot of cases, and have strongly recommended that museums not do that kind of work.
Okay. Jill writes, if you have a potentially valuable small item, which can fairly easily be switched out by someone who may have sleight of hand talent, I'm sure she's not referring to you, Justin, how do we protect ourselves during an in-person evaluation? Sure.
I mean, that is an interesting question. I don't think I've had to deal with that one before. You know, in some ways, do what you feel comfortable with. I mean, if you have that, I guess, suspicion or something like that, you know, make that known ahead of time. I mean, a lot of times, if I'm going into a situation like that, I want you to feel as safe as possible. So if that means I'm looking at it and you're holding on to it, and, you know, I have to, you know, I want to look at it and you hold it in your hand and flip it over and do, you know, show me the sides. You know, communication is really important. And I have to say, most of the people I know in my industry, first of all, we adhere to an ethical code. But most of the people I know just don't have first of all, the ability to swap out anything like that. Okay. And a lot of times they're not interested in that. They want to make sure that you feel safe. And so communicate that to them. And they should be pretty comfortable with working within your comfort level.
Okay, and I'm going to throw this out to either of you. Are there good places to find out the value of antiques or collectibles ourselves to know whether it might be worth getting an appraisal? And I think that's a great question, because I think that's what I would do. Just do a little research online somewhere and then call you when I found out, yes, this could potentially have worth. Are there websites that will do that for people, or help, or is it a matter of going to eBay, or what would you recommend?
Justin, if it's art, where do you go? Where would you recommend people go? Like ArtNet or anything like that?
Sure. So art is sometimes difficult because a lot of times the databases, the good databases, the quality databases will have a monthly fee. If you're okay with paying that, I would check AskArt, ArtNet. Those are the two that I value most. Yeah, I mean, this one, my answer on this can get pretty lengthy, but I think those are good places to start. And like I said, I'm always willing to take a look at photos and tell you, yeah, this is worth looking into, or maybe no, it's not. Gretchen, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, on the collectible end, like toys or your Hummels, just to reinforce you know, you can check sites like eBay, but what you want to do is look at not what people are asking. You need to have an eBay account and be able to sign into that account to look at the sold listings, you know, for the last 90 days. Then you can see what things are selling for, because a lot of times people are asking ridiculous prices for certain items because, you know, they've been told in their family this is worth a lot of money, or grandma said, you know, don't throw this away, it's valuable. Well, it's not. Sometimes it is, that's true, but sometimes, you know, with trends, you have to follow the trends and see where the market is today if you're interested in a current value.
Okay. Liz wants to know, and this hits home with me, what do I do with a silver coffee service? And I'm sure she's talking about the big, you know, silver coffee service. Sometimes they're on a cart. How are those selling? And are people still buying them at estate sales? Or?
If it's sterling, yes, but typically coffee services are silver plate. I mean, if you've got a sterling coffee service, call me and I'll just buy it. But typically they're silver plate, and silver plate, you know, it depends on what it is. Sometimes it does have value, but a lot of times it doesn't really.
Okay. And sterling is generally a lot lighter in weight than plated, correct?
It is, yes.
So you, once you kind of know that, I think it helps weeding through your silver if you inherited a lot. If you know that much, and then you can sort of go from there.
And it'll be marked sterling, or it will have the Lion Passant, the English hallmarks. It will be marked if it's true silver. There's also Danish silver, which is a different mark, and that's worth quite a bit, actually, because of the mid-century modern. So,
okay. Here's another one. We have quite a lot of antique books. Are there particular websites, dealers, bookshops that we should contact? Justin?
Sure. Yeah, there are, it kind of depends what they are, depends how rare they are, depends how in demand they are. I gave Kathy a list of 3 or 4 people in the area who may be, you might refer to. Also, sometimes your local used bookstores might be helpful. It's good to gauge what their experience is in being able to identify rare books and valuable books. It takes something, you know, especially with the book market, it's become very stratified, where the really valuable things become really valuable and everything else is kind of fallen off. So, you know, outside of being able to, you know, and there are some things that make books very valuable. First editions of really well-known works, especially if they were printed in limited copies, right? Once you get to the second, third editions, second, third printings, not quite as valuable. Older books, and I mean 1850s and before, a lot of times before, you know, you have mass production of books. You know, some things that get really, really rare and antique, but, you know, outside of, you know, a lot of times if something's going to be really, really valuable, you probably will have known it because you bought it for that purpose. A lot of times collectors have done a very good job of snagging these out of the market. But, you know, it is possible. I'd say start and make sure you look for well-known things, see if they're first edition. I mean, that's usually your best bet to start.
Okay, thank you. I also wanted to mention too that it just so happens that our next movie at our dessert and a movie night, which we do monthly, is the Booksellers. And that event is coming up. Where's my date here?
November 9th, Monday.
Thank you. November 9th at 7 p.m. And this is where we watch the movie in advance, and you can find it on Canopy. That's Kanopy. And it's a streaming service available for free with your library card. And our guests that night will be John and Gloria Hood from J. Hood Booksellers. And the movie's all about antiquarian bookshops mainly in New York. And it's a really good documentary. But anyway, they'll be on hand, and they know books too. So we may end up sort of segueing to that topic. And we have some questions about specific things, and that's sort of why we discourage people from bringing their items a la Antique Roadshow to this program today. But I'll just ask anyway, Centennial Dickens collection worth anything? Jean wants to know, Centennial Dickens collection. Anyone? Either one of you?
I mean, I'd be happy to take, I mean, I didn't come prepared to do an off the cuff kind of thing. I'm happy to, my email is rogersart, ROGERSART @gmail.com. Send me information, send me a photo, and I'm happy to kind of give you the briefest of rundowns and talk to you about it.
Yeah, and I also wanted to say too, we do after every monthly program, we will put up a resource list containing contact information for both of our guests today, and then we'll throw up the resources that Justin provided, as well as some that I have from town. And we have a question about some coins and bills. That's going to be next month. We're going to talk to Dean from the Kansas Coin Collection. He knows bills as well as coins, and is an expert on that. So we'll address that. But any sort of questions you have, you can go to the resource page and look at their email addresses and contact them directly, because we knew you wouldn't be prepared to deal item by item. So, and then, yeah, here's a question about what would the charge be for an appraisal for just 2 items. So again, I would probably recommend you contacting Justin directly. I think I've got all the questions. Oh, so how is the best way to sell items that are valuable these days? I mean, say you have just a handful, you're not ready for the estate sale, you don't want to commit to that, but you do maybe want some extra cash, and what is it, auction? Is it, you probably have a list of buyers, I'm assuming, for various things?
Well, there is an old joke in the appraisal world that, our favorite answer, every appraiser's favorite answer is, it depends. So a lot of times it is auction. Sometimes it's estate sale. It varies item by item. In the fine art world, it can be, a lot of times people think about Christie's and Sotheby's, but really, I mean, there are specialized galleries usually that deal in those kinds of things. A lot of times they're not in Kansas City or Lawrence or Topeka or, wherever everybody's coming from. So again, I'm always happy to take a look at those, try to direct you to the right place, because unfortunately there's just no one answer, especially if it's something with regional interest. Sometimes I'll send things to other states if the market there is better. So it really does just depend.
And it depends on what you're selling. If it's like Justin's talking about, if it's a specialized piece of art or pottery, you want to take, and it has value, you want to take that to a specialized auction house, whether it be heritage. We have some, you know, local auctioneers that do have a big online presence, and they get very good, you know, values for the items. It also depends on your time frame, because if it's let's say you have a Tiffany lamp, it's a true Tiffany lamp and it's worth, you know, such and such dollars. If you're wanting money tomorrow for it, that's not going to happen. But if you are willing to wait, you know, 6 months for that specialized auction or that folk art auction in Atlanta, Georgia, that's going to, you know, give you top dollar, then you have to have the patience to wait for that too.
Okay, and yeah, I did find that doing my own research that the auction houses do have themes. You know, they will, like you said, the folk art, that maybe someone will just do nautical paintings. And I mean, that was the one that I had, was a painting done by a guy who was born in Scotland and moved to Boston and then to San Francisco. So I couldn't find out much about him here, but I did contact people on the East Coast, and sent them the pictures and stuff and the paperwork from the Nelson, and got some estimates back. Unfortunately, this guy was really prolific, so my luck. But I mean, you can, if you know something about the piece, you can, you know, take that as far as Google will let you and find an expert, maybe in, especially in, you know, out of town, that could direct you. Let's see if there are any other questions from the group. We can open it up if you want. Let's go back into gallery view. If you have any questions you'd like to ask live, just raise your hand and I can, hopefully I will see you. And unmute yourself too, if you would. Or comments. Maybe someone, okay, Jean. Go ahead, Jean.
Yes, Jean.
Jen. Excuse
Yes.
me, Jen.
You know, I now that I'm a historian, I'm recognizing the value that, yeah, my stuff is not all that valuable, but there may be some things that are of historical value, like for archives and whatnot. My cousin gave me a book of tintypes of relatives. We know not if it's her side of the family, her mom's side of the family, my side of the family, we don't know. But I want to give it to a museum, but I don't even know if like a Detroit museum would even take it, because it's not labeled, you know, but again, it's because so many families are interested in genealogy. You know, I'm just not sure if it would be valuable to somebody if I gave it back to Detroit, where it came from.
So it's totally from the Detroit area, the families?
Yeah, I mean, we're assuming, yeah, it's a big, thick, it's like a velvet covered bound, you know, and then inside are all these incredible Victorian, you know, that looks like 1880s, 1890s photographs of men and women.
And your interest is to put it back into a historic,
or
right,
a genealogical something, just to give it to them, you know. I don't care about.
Do you have any names? Like,
there's no names. We don't know if it's Klein's or if it's Ganow's or we don't know. We don't know.
Because there are resources, you know, that would, yeah, you might, and it's just the Detroit area.
Assuming, yes, we're assuming that's, yeah, Detroit. I mean, it's Detroit City proper. Is our assumption, unless it could have been a binder, you know, album that came from Germany, is another possibility. I mean, you know, it could have been the German immigrants. I truly, I don't know. We don't know.
You'd be able to tell by the backdrops and the clothing they were wearing, I would think.
And it's, again, they're formal portraits.
Right.
You know, pretty much. And so it's mainly the costuming that you can tell.
You know, when I have clients who have those kinds of questions, a lot of times we'll start at sort of county historical levels, or excuse me, county historical museums, local libraries, local universities, to check and see, because a lot of times they'll have programs that are set up to deal with those kinds of things specifically. You have to have the right size institution. It can't be, it's not going to be the Detroit Institute of Art, but it's local, county historical museum, library, universities. That's generally where I start. And also do a little bit of your research ahead of time. Maybe come to them with the genealogy saying, these are who the people could be, but we don't know, we can't match them up. And, sometimes they have resources to do that, but at least it's a resource for scholars to come to. And even if it's not worth a lot of money, I encourage all my clients to, it takes a little time, it takes a little effort, but it really helps to preserve a history that we don't necessarily have anymore.
Right. Yeah. That's why I don't want to just throw it away.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you. And Martha has asked a question, what kind of things would state and/or county historical museums be interested in? And I think that might be a whole session to invite, Spencer Research Library, Douglas County Museum, and local museums, just to ask them what they will accept and what they're mostly interested in. And I think that's a great idea, because that we don't want to lose that preservation element from this formula as we dispose of our stuff. It might mean something to somebody else, even if it doesn't mean anything to us. Great question. Anybody else want to chime in? Dave Smith, let's unmute you here. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering if early Barbies have any value anymore. Like
early Barbies?
I have seen where early Barbies are still keeping their value. Your 1970s, 80s are not right now, but the early Barbies and their clothing, they're down. I'm going to say they're down, but they do still have some value.
Yeah, it should be like 59.
Well, that would be the first year of Midge. Yeah. So yeah, I've seen them sell. And there's still collectors out there, but that's more of a, you're not going to find that in Lawrence, that collector. You might find a dealer who buys it to resell it. But if you want to hit the global market with that, you're going to want to sell it on eBay or Etsy, that kind of format, to see your highest dollar come to you.
Gretchen, can you speak to original packaging? Because I've always read that for something to be more valuable, it needs to be in the original box or with the original tag or whatever.
Yeah, that's desirable. But if something's popular and rare, if you don't have the box, it's not the end of the world. Yeah, you can. It will still sell.
Okay. Anybody else want to chime in, contribute, ask a question? No? Okay. Oh, wait. What about lead military miniatures?
Justin smiles. They're still popular. He'll probably tell you he's got. Do you have collectors for those, Justin? Because I do.
Yeah, that's not one that comes up with a lot of the people that I know. That's not anything that my clients are. That is an interesting question. Yeah,
I get questions about those figures a lot. We don't see them a lot anymore, though. So if somebody has a collection of those, they will sell.
But again, it might not be a Lawrence or Kansas City buyer.
Well,
it might be a Leavenworth buyer.
It'll sell in this area because I know people ask me for them all the time.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh yeah, lead crystal. Is that gone away with the China, or it's not as valuable anymore?
Yeah, glassware is,
Even lead crystal.
yep. Sorry to say, but yeah.
There's a lot of it, I bet.
Yeah,
Let's go to Mary. Mary, I'm going to, if you could unmute yourself there. There you go.
What about original precious moments?
Nope.
No. Okay.
Sorry, sweetie.
There are a lot of those.
A lot of precious moments. There's a lot of Hallmark ornaments in this town too, since we have Hallmark. So Hallmark, precious moments. Yeah.
Okay.
Jen, you're giving me another chance to pronounce your name correctly.
How about you. I have Pippi Longstocking items from Sweden.
Oh, that's
they're
cool.
They my friends bought them at the local store recently. It's not like they're 1940s, but again, I just don't know if there's a demand for anything like that. If people even know who Pippi is.
Well, I don't know
who Pippi is.
I haven't seen anything by Pippi. That might be interesting. Well, and that's what you should also remember, that's an interesting item, that you don't see every day. See?
Ooh.
Yeah.
And on that note, if I can just add one thing,
yeah.
I cannot stress this enough. Whatever item you have, whatever artwork you have, whatever book you have, it is not a poker chip, right? You don't just get to go and redeem it. It takes effort to get it to the right market, to get it into the right hands, to get the right people to see it. And, sometimes that can be specialized, but on the flip side, I think, like Gretchen had just mentioned, that's an interesting item. And Gretchen could probably do something really amazing with the marketing of that, especially since it's hard to find around here. And there might be an interested party.
Yeah, unique collections always sell, always.
Yes.
It's the things that are mass produced that are hard to sell. If something's interesting and creative and unique, those are the items that will always sell. I never worry about that stuff, ever. It's the Hummels, it's the Hallmark ornaments, it's the books, the hardback books from the 1990s. They're filling a room. Those are the things I worry about.
So while we're, we probably should wrap it up in just a few minutes, but since we're on the third day of Election Day, I just wondering if anyone has anything to say about political memorabilia. Do you see a lot of that, like from, early campaigns or campaign buttons or anything like that has value? Or
yeah, that always sells too. We just had a sale in Oskaloosa, and there was a lot of McKinley, Stevenson, Cleveland, Grover Cleveland, all that stuff sold, all of it. And even when I get Clinton buttons and Carter, that stuff always sells. People love campaign memorabilia and anything political.
Okay. Anybody else before we adjourn? How are those prices? I assume, Martha, you mean how are the campaign items priced?
Yeah, I sold those buttons this last weekend anywhere between $20 and $100. So they brought, some change to the family. And they just, they're just sitting. When I find these things, they're usually in a tin of buttons or, in a junk drawer, just with rubber bands and paper clips. You find this stuff. So it's always fun to find that kind of stuff.
Okay. All right. I guess that's all the questions from the gallery view. Thank you so much, Justin Rogers and Gretchen Wilson, for helping us out today. We've got a lot of great information to process. And again, we will put Gretchen and Justin's contact info along with all of the information that they provide up on the website. Give us like a day or two to get that done, and then we'll send you a follow-up with a link to that page and to the YouTube link if you want to watch this program again. And oh, we're getting some applause and we're getting some thank yous to Justin and Gretchen in the chat.
Thank you.
So remember, next month, it will be on December 3rd, Thursday at 4 p.m., our next Downsizers Club, where we will sort of focus on the money, the coins, the bills, and gems, jewels, precious metals, and get some specialists to talk about those.
Dean's great. You'll like him. He's very knowledgeable.
Yeah, we actually sold some coins that my husband had from his childhood to him, and it was very educational. So
I use him a lot when I do estate sales. He'll appraise things for me.
Good. And then we'll get, for the next month, we'll try to get those museum curators together all in one place, and you guys can talk to them about what they're interested in and what they accept and what they can help you research. I think that would be a great thing to do. So thank you for that idea, whoever it was.
John.
Jen. Okay, Jen. So that's it. I guess everybody have a good night, and we'll see you at the next thing. And thanks again. Thanks, Gretchen and Justin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And have a good election night, I hope.
Another one.
Another one.
Another one.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Justin.